Well, 3 episodes in for season 3 of Star Trek Picard, and finally we get to the episode that really turns the page, and no. No. So that leaves 7 episodes? I think it's 10 altogether, so... well, what are you going to do? And again, approaching this, always have to be aware of a certain amount of metric here, and that this gets more scrutiny than it probably ordinarily would. All you can do is say, what if this had been season 1 of Picard? I would have thought this was really good, because it would have been better than STD. But at this point, and after the 2 seasons of Picard, which did more damage to Star Trek than even STD did, there's no call for that. It's too late, and that's not a good metric for, well, at least it's better than the other turd. It's like, no. And if that's all there is to this, this has been a colossal waste of everyone's time. Can't say, damn, if only this had been, yeah, you can say, and damn's the emphasis here. If it had just been this basic sort of adequate adventure show for Picard, I don't really see it as a return to form for Next Generation and that sort of thing. It's not. But, so yeah, it could have been, but it wasn't. We did go through those 2 seasons, and it was terrible. So, what was good? Here, I'll do that. Well, for the most part, the special effects are pretty good. There's mistakes here and there. I thought I kind of caught that at the end of the last episode where the Titan flies into the nebula and just bloop, disappears. Kind of needed to fade into it. Don't think I caught that here, but maybe it did, and maybe someone with better eyes. But, you know. But the main focus of it was the battle between the Titan and the enemy ship, and the Shrike. And for the most part, it was pretty cool. They have this warp weapon, which was used in the terrorist attack that Raffi witnessed, and so they're using it here to trick the position of the Titan. Because once they open it, it gets caught in its gravity well, and it can't resist it, and it goes through it, and it comes out in a more vulnerable position, and the Shrike fires on them and all that sort of thing. And so it's fine, and it's not looking great for him, and they're in a lot of trouble, and all that. The other positive is Worf. He has more of a role here. Of course, he's teamed with Raffi, but you know, what are you going to do? And they have a reveal as to what the plot seems to be about. And it's fitting that Worf is there, because he's one of the few members of the original Next Generation crew who would understand this, because he crossed over to Deep Space Nine and he fought in the Dominion War. And so, oops, I just let it out. The Dominion is involved in this, or a rogue faction of Dominion people who never gave up on the Dominion War, apparently. And they're a terrorist organization now. And so there's a scene of him interrogating a guy who turns out to be a shapeshifter, and Raffi's, you know, caught off guard by this because she's not familiar with this, at least not, you know, personally anyway. And so this is, the plot thickens or sickens. But after that reveal, then it's, oh yes, of course, there's a saboteur aboard the Titan. And turns out it was that weird-looking guy from when Riker and Picard came on and inspected the crew. You know, if you're going to be the shapeshifter and disguise yourself, best disguise yourself not as the weird-looking guy. So that's the deal. But all that's fine. It's the template of, you know, espionage and sort of detective shows with what Raffi was doing and that sort of thing, which you can do for Star Trek, but ultimately... there's very little here in sci-fi concept. It's mostly espionage and space wars, you know. So, but, you know, that is featured in Star Trek, but typically around some sort of sci-fi concept, but not so much, at least not yet. I mean, of course, the technology and the warp weapon and all that, but that's not quite there. I mean, they're doing one episode over 10 episodes, so it'll take a while before they get to the main thing, I assume. So that's about it. There's some nice scenes between Riker and Picard, stuff like that, which, of course, the reunion of the cast is the main selling point of it. They do a flashback scene in an attempt to set up the justification for how the show ends. So it's a flashback scene to some time when Riker was still captain of the Titan, and his son had just been born, and he and Picard are in the bar once again, and they still didn't have lights back then either, and so they're sitting there, and they use the de-aging technology on them, and for the most part it kind of works. They're in the dark and everything, and Riker looks kind of okay. And of course, Jonathan Frakes doing it. His voice is fine, but Patrick Stewart's isn't. They probably should have hired someone to do an impersonation. Someone could do a good Patrick Stewart voice, but they didn't. And it was like, his voice was going already back then. But what are you going to do? And but the reason he did it was to reemphasize that Riker had lost a son. And it shows how happy he was when his son was born and all that. The bad part is it reminds you how his son died, which because of the bigotry towards androids. And if only the positronic brains had been around, they could have saved their son, or some nonsense from the previous, the first season, whatever the hell that was. You try not, do your best to not remind people, but it doesn't matter. Too late. So they do that. And all that stuff. Meanwhile, there's a confrontation between Riker and Beverly, and for the most part, it works. It makes sense. He's angry. She robbed him of the chance for him to decide what he would want to do if he wanted to be a father to Jack and be a husband to Beverly and all that sort of stuff. And she's going on about, but your life was all adventure, and I've already lost a husband to a danger and stuff, and I didn't want to, that kind of thing. But it's interesting in that it doesn't really structure it in that Beverly is in the right. Picard has his say, and actually I think he's on the high note here. She should have told him. Of course, this is too reminiscent of Kirk and Carol Marcus in Wrath of Khan. It's the same damn thing. And, of course, Picard is like, but in here, Kirk did know about his son, but they had agreed that he would stay out of it, Whereas Picard never gets the chance, but again, he's mourning he lost the opportunity of a life he never got to lead, And she didn't give him that opportunity to decide that he would leave the adventure life of Starfleet and all that stuff to be a father to his son and so on. And so it's fine for what it is. But I was a bit surprised that it's like you're supposed to let the woman win the argument all the time. She doesn't. She's not apologetic about it. She thinks she's in the right. More or less, I was trying to save my son and all this sort of stuff. And of course, she had gone through the death of her husband. Wesley disappeared. She doesn't know where because he's a traveler now and all that. But whatever. They said 20 years, but Jack Crusher looks a lot older than 20. So I'm not sure exactly what that's about. But anyway, so that's about it. So they have a saboteur on the ship. Jack Crusher figures it out. He goes to 7 of 9. She's been confined to quarters. Should have been put in the brig, but nevertheless. So Jack punches out her guard. Yeah, I mean, Star Trek has done this. So what are you going to do? And they go to this leak that's happened that the saboteur has done, and they go to fix it. The leak is how the enemy ship is tracking the Titan. They keep trying to hide, and hey, how's it finding us, and all this stuff, and that's how. But the saboteur shows up and nearly kills Jack Crusher by locking him in the room with the gas, But don't worry, he's saved. And then the saboteur attacks again with a bomb, and the ship's even more damaged. And Captain Shaw had been wounded, so he handed command to Riker. And Riker is just going with we got to hide from them and try to take our chance at escape because they outgun us. There's no point in fighting them. Picard, no, we have to fight. And so there's a split between them, and there's an argument, so they force that into it. And I say force because Picard offers no real strategy. How are you going to do this? They've already seen their super duper pooper scooper warp weapon, and they're already outgunned. So it's like, how's that going to work? You know, but again, they can't really hide because they're tracking them. They try to get rid of the leak, but now they've got another problem, and they come upon the ship, and they see it, and Riker decides, okay, let's fire everything. It was a split-second decision, so he does, but of course they use their warp weapon. The torpedoes go through it and come back out and hit the back of the Titan. And so now they're pretty much powerless, and they're being sucked deeper into the nebula. And then Riker orders Picard to leave the bridge because you've just killed us all. Now, this is supposed to be this big split between the two. Picard was pushing Riker because he says, I know you're reluctant to put us in danger because of your loss. And he says, hey, how dare you bring up that about his son, you know, and all that. Which is, unless they're going to retcon that and he died a different way. That's no, but that's the deal with Riker. And I suppose they're insinuating this is why he ultimately left Starfleet originally, because he just didn't have the stomach for it anymore or something along those lines. But Picard offered no answer here, and it's kind of stupid of him to say, we have to fight. Well, how? You know, he doesn't say, well, remember this or that, this is a maneuver we could do, or something, you know, and all that. But it was all just a forced position to have them be angry at each other all of a sudden, and to have Picard, you know, all sulking and, I'm sorry, and leave the bridge, you know, and then they're all sitting there, well, I guess we're going to die, because they're sinking into the nebula. Or is it? Because earlier they detected seemingly signs of sentience from the cloud. Well, this harkens back to a season 1 episode, I believe, when Picard became one with a intelligent cloud being. And then they realized he's not compatible, and they had to use the transporter to bring him back and all that. Yeah, well, and then, but my worry is that there was the Strange New Worlds did an episode where Dr. M'Benga gave up his daughter to a creepy cloud entity. Yeah, that was bad. So I'm hoping there's no connection to that one. So perhaps this will be yet another reunion for Picard, and he'll make contact with the cloud entity. And that's how they'll survive this seemingly impossible death trap, you know. Just a guess, you know. But so that's about it. So that's the cliffhanger they're on. I mean, my guess is that the Shrike wouldn't want them to fall into the cloud because they're still after Jack Crusher. So with no power or anything, I imagine they could zoom in and beam him out. And maybe they will, but Picard and will make contact with the cloud, and then the cloud will help them escape, or something else. Suddenly, Geordi shows up at another ship, and Geordi and saves them, or something like that, which would be rather sudden and stupid. But yeah, maybe that's what they'll do. I don't, doesn't really matter. That's the cliffhanger, and that's how they wrapped up episode 3. So. It had its battles, so I guess it had a little more going on than last episode. But, well, I'm still not seeing what other people say they saw. But then again, it's only 3 episodes, but how long can I keep saying that, Am I going to be saying this by episode 5? 6, maybe? I will say that the only scene that really pissed me off was the 7 of 9 moment of her complaining about Starfleet and all that, because that was just stupid. This thing with Riker and Picard is sort of lazily slapped in here, but that one was the 7 of 9 thing was a little worse. But that's the only little remnants of the type of stupid crap that you would get from the other 2 seasons. The rest of this is just, almost adequate to bland. And that's it. Which is nowhere near good enough to say, you know what, they really did something here. So I'm not in that camp. And there's more episodes to come, but so far, still not seeing it.